Recent research shows if given the choice, nearly all older Canadians would prefer to age in place within their own communities. But researchers at McGill University found it's not equally accessible to all, despite the existence of universal health care. And joining me now to talk more about those findings is Clara Bolster-Foucault, first author of the study, which was just published in Age and Aging. Clara, great to speak with you.
Likewise, thanks so much for having me.
You know, while most people, I think, understand that our health status is an important factor as to whether or not we'll be able to grow old in our homes, your research found it's far from the only thing that impacts whether we're able to do it.
Absolutely. I think that in an ideal world, and most folks would agree with this, health is the thing that should be determining whether someone is able to age at home or they need support from, say, a long-term care institution. But we know from a vast body of research that social forces influence our health throughout our lifespan, they influence our access to health care, and they therefore influence the capacity to age in place. And what we found in our research was exactly that. It was that these social forces that we often take for granted as not influencing the way that we experience health, particularly in later life, in settings like Canada with universal health care, do in fact influence the way in which folks are able to age in place.
I'm sure we have an idea of, some of the social factors, but I'm curious as to which ones at play surprised you.
That's a good question. We cast a pretty wide net in this case. So we were looking at a lot of different socio-demographic factors, and it won't surprise anyone that things like social resources and, and socioeconomic status, so like, for example, income, make it easier for someone to age in place. But what we weren't expecting was education. And it's important to note that these data come from a variety of different countries, notably a majority from the US. But what we found was that folks with higher education or more educational attainment seemed less likely to age in place. And there's a bunch of reasons this could be, none of which we were able to explore in this paper. But for example, people who have higher educational attainment tend to have children later in life. They therefore maybe have fewer children, and their children might live farther away. So it's possible that in a case where they do need support, they may have less familial caregiving, particularly from children. That being said, there may also be a situation where folks who are more educated are able to exercise more choice in their decision to age in place or not. And maybe what we're seeing anecdotally is, for example, people choosing to transition into a long-term care setting in order to avoid being a burden on their families. So there's a really nuanced way in which people are experiencing this. It's a very complex decision. In some cases, folks are more or less able to exercise their agency, and we think that education plays a role in that. So there's really a lot to unpack through this, and I think there's a lot of interesting work that remains to be done.
Yeah, very interesting. Before you get to the work that needs to be done, I'm curious how you'd like to see these findings used to maybe address some of the disparities Canadians face moving forward.
I think that's a great question. My first instinct is always to say that we need better policies to support aging in place. And from a policy standpoint, this is from a pan-Canadian lens, this ends up being home care. So we have publicly funded home care in Canada, but it's dramatically underfunded in a lot of jurisdictions, and the wait times are very, very long. And so on the one hand, I think that home care should be universally accessible, and we shouldn't be targeting specific people. But in the case where we don't have the resources to really have a system that is able to meet everyone's needs, I think the only way to move forward is identifying populations that are most at risk or that need the most support to age in place, and use the levers that are within our policy, whatever jurisdiction is at play, to start to mitigate those inequities.
Some very important information about a very pressing real life situation playing out in this country. Clara, thanks so much for your time and insight. It was great speaking with you.
Likewise, have a great day.